All right. In addition to all these movies getting pushed back, that has a ripple effect on the awards season. In case you don't know, we started this show as Awards Blend. You can find all of our retro merch in the retro section of the new shop that Gabe is launching. Awards Blend merch. And so the Oscars. The Oscars are totally screwed. They are going to be moving back 2 months and airing on April 25th of 2021. That also means that the eligibility for films to contend for the Oscars is going to be February of next year. Kev, what do you think about these changes? Because I don't really know how to process all this.
I mean, like the move to April 25th doesn't surprise me because they have to have eligibility extend to the end of February because there are films that are in production.
Why?
What's going on, Jake?
Why do they have to have eligibility go to?
Makes perfect sense because there are films that had to shut down production that were still supposed to come out this year.
Tough shit.
Wait, like
judge the movies. Judge the movies that came out this year.
Wait, what are you, dude? Are you not? You're missing my point completely.
Like, no, I understand there will be lesser films to judge between January 1st and December 31st, but play the cards you're dealt. Dance with the one that brought you. Judge the films that came out this year.
Why just have them compete next year?
Yes,
have them compete the following.
Like at the end of the year, if Elizabeth Moss really gave one of the best performances that came out this year, then fucking nominate her. Like I don't understand. No. Like why do we have to make sure other Oscar movies make sure they wrap up so they can get in so we can give it to the same type of movie we always give it to? Just play the cards that you were dealt, and if these are the movies that came out this year, then judge those.
Then Jake, tell me why you were okay with the eligibility change for VOD films to be nominated for Oscars. That was a change.
They're at least coming out this year.
Yeah, and they're done.
But that's a new change that you were okay with. So this one you're not okay with because, see, in my opinion, we are in an uncharted, unprecedented moment in history where production had to shut down for films that were supposed to come out later this year. And if those films had to shut down, why is it their fault that they can't compete in the Oscars this year? I find that to be a ridiculous
It just feels like notion. They want to make sure that they get in as many of the Oscar type of films as possible so that they don't have to give it to anything out of the ordinary that they normally wouldn't give it to.
I'm going to say this. I guarantee that the Oscars, before they announced this change, took a survey of all the films that they quote unquote feel will be in contention to get a sense of whether they're ready or not. Right? And if they heard back from enough people who said, let's use Mr. Spielberg as an example. If he was like, hey, I'm not going to have West Side Story ready in time because I still have to do a bunch of pickups and it'll be January or February. Or, 2 or 3 other examples of movies like that. I bet you that that's what pushed them to say, okay, fine, we'll push the eligibility to February and give those films time to compete. I don't know where I fall on this. This is really interesting to see you two divided by this because I didn't give it as much thought, but I'm a little bit more with Jake in that, fine, if you maintain the end of December as your availability window and it means you cut down on the number of films that are going to be ready in time, cool. That's the reaction to us being in a weird time. And then those movies that come out in January and February, they would just compete next year. Yeah. They would just be Kevin, in the next
I don't buy. I don't like that.
Kevin, I have a question. Let's say Tenet comes out. And and it is like a masterpiece, and we're like, oh my god, this is Nolan's year. He's got the Oscar in his hand. It's about time. Give this man an Oscar. And then because they pushed back the eligibility window, something slips in on February 26th, and it's like that Oscar-y type of movie, and they were able to get in, and all of a sudden a King's Speech.
New Tom Hooper.
Yes, the new Tom Hooper film comes in and
Tom Hooper does a movie about social justice.
Yeah. You're not going to tell me that that's going to bother you a little bit?
No, it wouldn't bother me at all because if Tenet wins by default because not enough films came out, I don't want Tenet to win an Oscar because it won.
I asked you guys a couple of weeks ago, would it bother you if Nolan won this year despite the fact that there was less? And you're like, no, it wouldn't bother me at all.
Would have an asterisk.
I'm saying it wouldn't bother me personally if Nolan won. I'm saying Tenet winning Best Picture because enough films didn't get made to come out, I think is the wrong way to celebrate that movie. I think it actually takes Tenet down a few pegs.
I specifically asked you guys if that were to happen, and you guys were like, no, I wouldn't care.
You said Christopher Nolan. You didn't say Tenet winning Best Picture. You said Christopher Nolan.
He will win an Oscar if Tenet wins Best Picture.
No, the question you asked was, would you be happy if Christopher Nolan won an Oscar this year in a year with less films? I said, of course I want Christopher Nolan to win an Oscar, but Tenet winning Best Picture with less films this year, to me, makes the film a lesser important film, in my opinion.
I have a question to kind of, that's a good question for the show as far as like our personal opinion about a specific movie, but I'm leaning towards Jake's perspective here because in a sense, you know, we're not just seeing movies this year change. Just a few minutes ago, we're discussing movies next year that are being pushed back a year. And we're kind of seeing how it's not like we're just seeing 1 year affected. We're just kind of, the whole slate is being shifted year over year until we get to a more normal sort of state. So does this just kind of push that down the road? If we open up this eligibility till February, are they going to shift that eligibility every year, or is next year there's only going to be 10 months?
And within that 10 months, be truncated.
Yeah.
No, it's going to move forward like that. It's going to be February.
It's always going to be.
You think it's going to be forever?
Oh yeah, I think it's going to be the new pattern.
What? Yeah. I wouldn't be into that. Why?
That's weird for that.
But it's not the best film of the year. It's the best film of parts of these 2 years. It's like a baseball season, or like a basketball season.
Like a movie comes out on February 6th and wins Best Picture in April, like 2 weeks. Like, isn't that strange?
What's the difference? What's the difference? What's the difference between a movie coming out in December and winning an Oscar in February? Come on, that's ridiculous.
2 different years.
No, that's ridiculous, man.
The Gregorian calendar.
Yeah, I
mean, it's the year that it came out.
I think you guys are not thinking about all these productions of so many people who are working on these movies that wanted to get their film made and were shut down from the pandemic, and then they can't make their movie. So all the Oscars are doing is saying, listen, man, we understand that you're in uncharted territory. That is the argument
that they are making movies to win Oscars.
That you want to still make your film this year. I find it so let me ask you this.
It shouldn't be about winning Oscars.
If a production shut down and the movie wasn't finished until February of next year, you're telling me that because that movie was made in February, it has to be on the next Oscar cycle?
It's about when it comes out. It's about when it comes out.
I think it's such backwards thinking. Like, if you have a movie come out December 31st and you let it win an Oscar on February.
Studios hold movies all the time for weird Oscar calendars.
I'm saying I just don't buy the argument that films should suffer because of the pandemic. I feel like that.
Why are they suffering? Then your argument is that a movie is made to win Oscars. A movie should just be that. But that is your argument of like what suffering is.
No, it's not. I said movie productions. I think it's disrespectful to a movie production and a director if you're going to tell that person that they can no longer participate. Listen, if you want to put a movie up for an Oscar, next year. I just don't believe in what you're saying personally. I don't understand
what the problem with waiting is. Like, I'm sorry you weren't able to complete your film. Sorry. It'll come out next year, so you will compete in next year's on. Like
look at how well Get Out did, and it came out in February. Look at how well Black Panther did, it came out in February.
You're talking about a chunk of time missing of films that weren't shot or produced or finished within 3 or 4 or 5 month period. That's cannot have Academy's an Oscars. Fault. You cannot. It's also not the world's fault that we were going through a pandemic.
But like we could get so many more interesting winners from this year. If
it's a limited landscape. You don't have enough movies to even have competition.
You call it limited. I say there's potential for people to win that they maybe otherwise wouldn't have won.
Nah.
But is there not merit to the fact that a limited landscape is a correct reflection of the year that Oscar represents?
I think that's fair.
Like if we're talking about looking at it from a historical standpoint, 20 years from now, do we want the movie that came out in 2021 to win an Oscar, or do we want the movie that came out in the weird year?
So you're saying a movie
to reflect what that year was,
that started to film in January, that was shut down by the pandemic.
You're putting so much stock in when it starts filming. What does it matter when it starts filming?
I believe in the eligibility extension because I feel like it's a fair trade to films that weren't able to finish. That's just how I feel about it.
I just don't think that's really a factor because look at.
Well, it's an opinion. I'm allowed to have my opinion.
No. I just don't think that's like a logistic factor as far as like the actual effect of the film. Like Andrew Patterson, for instance, shot his film like 3 years ago, he said, but it just came out this year. You know, that happens. Like people shoot stuff all the time. I think whenever your film is complete is when it's complete. And so compete in that year. I don't know. That's where I lean. But
hold on. Ultimately, I think the people who are on the side of Jake and Gabe believe that the Oscars should honor, come hell or high water, whatever came out from January 1st to December 31st. Okay. That should be what the Oscars honor. Now, it could be in a theater, it could be on VOD, and we all acknowledge that there is a pandemic that has disrupted everything. But they feel that it's more important to keep the parameters of January 1st to December 31st. And if you acknowledge that this year is going to be weird because we don't have a lot of movies that are eligible, the ones that can't hit that December 31st time frame just have to go back to the next year of January 1st to December 31st. And before you jump in, I think a lot of those films would essentially, and we'll use Spielberg again as an example because he's a late December release. If he says, all right, we can't make this window. And this has happened to a number of films over the years where they pick their release date slots.
But not because of a pandemic.
November.
It's a different story,
go back to
man.
November. He'd go back to November of the next year. And he'd be back in the Oscar contention. It would just be another year. When we're talking about other films like these other movies, Matrix 4, Tom Hanks's BIOS, they're jumping a whole year. But they're not Oscar contenders. Or maybe they will be. Who knows? We have no idea. We haven't seen them yet. It's just whether you think the integrity of the calendar should be January 1st to December 31st. That's all.
There's a 3-month hole in the filmmaking calendar. They're filling a 3-month hole with the eligibility. It makes perfect sense. Perfect sense.
The last thing I'll say is 10 years from now, I'm loathing having the conversation of who won Best Original Screenplay in 2020 for the year of 2020. Well, this one, but it came out in February of 2021. But that was like, I don't want to have that conversation 10 years from now when I forget that they made this change. It just sounds so...
This is without a doubt one of the most heated conversations that we've ever had on ReelBlend, and I didn't think the Oscars pushing back a few weeks was going to trigger this. But more importantly, I want to hear from everybody else about how you feel, whether you think the eligibility window should have been pushed, whether you think that the Oscars should honor... Where do you think the Oscars should honor? And I am dying to hear people's feedback to this.